We're all good to go, Jeffrey.
Perfect. Thanks, Jesse. Alrighty. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the September 2022 full board for Manhattan Community Board 4. My name is Jeffrey LeFrancois, and it's a privilege to be calling this meeting to order this evening as chair. And here we are, back on the squares. Tonight's meeting is being held via Zoom as the governor has extended the executive order to allow for public meetings to be held virtually. The meeting is being streamed on our YouTube channel, and a transcript is also being recorded and will be made available to anybody who requests the meeting after the fact. We have a presentation this evening from our friends at the Church of Holy Apostle and a public hearing regarding the ULURP action for the EMS site on 29th Street. And just a few other items of board business because, we all took August off except for our friends on the BLP committee, of which we are always incredibly thankful for your service for meeting during the month of August. As is our custom, we'll also have our public session, and members of the public who signed up in advance to speak will be given the ability to do so for 2 minutes during the public session. If you did not sign up through our website to speak in advance of our meeting, you'll have until 6:45 tonight to do so by using the raise hand function on Zoom. The agenda for tonight's meeting can be found on our website at MCB4.nyc. We're going to start first this evening with the public hearing on the ULURP action, which I should note is the main reason we are convening this evening. It is a land use action on 29th Street for an EMS siting station, which is being overseen by the Chelsea Land Use Committee. Jesse, we don't have any speakers signed up for this, but I have to pass it to our co-chairs to open the hearing so we can open and close that, correct?
That is correct, unless there's someone here now in the public that would like to speak on it.
Okay, so Jessica and Kerry are co-chairs of the Chelsea Land Use Committee. I'm passing it over to you for the public hearing on the ULURP action for the EMS site on West 29th Street.
Great, thank you, Jeffrey, and good evening, everyone. As was mentioned, the Chelsea Land Use Committee met to hear a proposal for a ULURP to find a permanent home for the EMS station currently located on 23rd Street. And this is an opportunity to hear from the public before the board votes on a letter later this evening. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. I think we can close the hearing.
Great. Thanks, Jessica. Moving right along, I'm going to pass it over to Reverend Pearson from Holy Apostles Church for some updates and discussion on what's going on at the church. Reverend?
Thank you so much. Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to come and be with you this evening. And thanks to everyone on Community Board 4 for your ongoing work in what continues to be a challenging time, sometimes inspiring, but challenging time in the city. I saw that I was making a presentation, and that's a little formal for what I'm doing. This is really more of a verbal update around some of the activity that is happening at Holy Apostles and will be happening in the next year and a half to 2 years on the corner of 28th and 9th. Many of you know the work of Holy Apostle Soup Kitchen. We are coming up on our 40-year anniversary this October. And during that time, we have not closed our doors. Every weekday from the very first meal that was served 40 years ago, we have remained open. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with what we offer on those weekdays, we have a hot meal service that is open to everyone in midday, Monday through Friday from 10:30 to 12:30. 3 days a week, 3 afternoons a week. We have a pantry program, which has grown enormously during the pandemic. And then we also have a social services program where we provide referrals and counseling and haircut vouchers and IDs and clothing if we've got it. And so, we try to be present for the people who come to us during those hours, and also in the afternoon hours, the lunchtime hours and the afternoon hours. Just to give you an idea of the work, the hot meal service last week, we served over 4,000 meals. in our pantry program, we served almost 65,000 bag lunches and pantry meal bags. So we've always seen a lot of need, and now we're seeing a lot more. And the numbers are huge. Of course, each number represents a human being, someone in our neighborhood, someone in our city who is struggling and in need. We were fortunate and really were supported by people who felt that they could in all kinds of ways during the pandemic, so that we didn't close during the pandemic either. And as the needs grew during the time of COVID and our responses grew too, we became increasingly aware of the limits imposed on us by our building and also of the negative effects of deferred maintenance, most of which had been accumulating. The deferred maintenance issues had been accumulating since we had a catastrophic fire in the 90s. Of course, much was redone and rebuilt and built anew at that time, and not much has happened since. So at the moment, we are undertaking a major capital improvement project with the overarching goal being to sustain our ability to serve as a community center in this neighborhood that we love so well. So here are the elements of the project and why they're important. The first is a fire alarm system. We did have a catastrophic fire, and at the time, a new fire alarm system was installed that was state of the art. And now, below these many years later, when firefighters come to our building, they don't know what to do with the panel. They don't know what to do with our system. It's so outdated. So clearly that has to be revamped. Our HVAC is on its last legs. Again, hasn't been looked at since the fire. So we need to be making sure that that can remain so that when our guests are in the space, they are comfortable. We're doing some roof repair work, again, deferred maintenance. We're also engaging in an exterior lighting project. Having the corner of 28th and 9th dark at night is not good for the neighborhood, and it's certainly a security issue. We want to have good lighting for the people who come to our warming center in the winter and for our community members year round. And then arguably the heart of the project is building an elevator off of our mission house. So if you are familiar with Holy Apostles, you know that there's the church, and then as you're facing the front doors of the church, to the right is a brick building that we call the Mission House, Community Center, whatever. That's where the offices are housed, and the kitchen is there. We have a second floor conference area. Some of you may have attended meetings there. So that space, we are going to build an elevator. It's really challenging because we have to work within a footprint that is kind of small, but it's really, really important for two major reasons. The first reason being that just practically, there's a lot more food on our site now because of our pantry program and because of the increased need. So it's the way that we have to unpack, and I use we, the royal we, I don't do much of it. The staff at Holy Apostles is heroic in their efforts to unpack pallets, wheel boxes into the church, carry them downstairs by hand. Doing all of that is not safe, and it's also just not an effective way to store food or move food with the rapidity that we need right now. And then, of course, Holy Apostles has a long-term commitment to radical hospitality, and those who can't negotiate stairs can't access our community programming. And this has always been the case. We do have a ramp. We have learned that that ramp is not up to code. Even if it was up to code, it only allows access to part of the building. So when I was called to Holy Apostles over 4 years ago, this was a question that came up during the search. And it's been something that's been really important for me to get into play and to have this project moving forward, and also to both our worshiping community and all the people that volunteer, support, and use the services of the soup kitchen. This is a many tentacled project. It's complicated, as you might imagine. We're thinking that it's going to cost about $5 million, although that's really kind of, that changes and evolves and morphs as the information that comes to us evolves and morphs. We have a project manager. We're working with Mikowski Studio Architecture for the church work, and Matisse Architectural Design for the elevator piece of the project, and craft engineering and Midtown preservation architecture are also involved. So we're really excited. It's going to be, again, it'll be not happen overnight, of course. We're hoping that it will all be completed maybe by the end of 2023, maybe into 2024. The hope is that that our momentum will be strong and that we can be doing everything that we need to do for the project and also not close. Our goal is to keep everything going in some form so that we continue to meet the needs of the people that are coming to our doors every day. So that's really all I have to say. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you this evening.
Thank you, Reverend. And we certainly appreciate, I think, first, the wonderful services that you provide to the community day in and day out universally, without question, I should add. And also for willingly coming to us tonight to talk about this. We typically take questions from board members, so I see a couple of hands up if you're okay. We'll go through the list there. Betty, we'll start with you.
Hi, glad that you gave us our presentation about the church. I live next to the church and on 28th Street, and I have been inside the church, and I understand your challenges physically and all the improvements you want to make. Two questions. One is the lighting, that you're going to have lighting, new lighting that goes focus on the sidewalk or on the grounds of the church. What is that?
It will, that's a great question. The lighting is going to light the courtyard primarily. First and foremost, light the courtyard and right up close to where the sidewalk meets the beginning of the property of the church. And then there will be some exterior lighting that lights the outside of the church, not all night long. Certainly we would be in conversation with the neighborhood to make sure that lighting was not obtrusive for neighbors.
I wasn't too worried about it being obtrusive. I'm just want to applaud having more light on the corner.
Yes, there will be. Yeah, so it's the idea is to light the edifice and the steeple and the courtyard to make it safe and just again make that not, if you walk up at night, as you well know because you live there, all of a sudden there's just this darkness at the corner. So we want to remediate that.
And the other question is for your I think providing space for the elevator. Does the church is going to do it all on their own, within their own boundaries? Because
yes,
there's Penn South is right next to your boundary. So it won't go into any Penn South property, right?
It will not.
Okay. And elevator, I root for that. That's great.
Yeah, well, and the elevator when I started the job pre-pandemic was basically a passenger elevator. And now the challenge is even greater because now with our pantry program, it has to be more of a hospital-esque elevator because it has to hold pallets now. So it just adds to the challenge. Matisse is doing a great job really trying to figure out what's best for it. That's in the sort of the beginning stages right now. So we don't know a ton of details about what that's going to look like, but we're hopeful.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty. Katie?
Thanks, Reverend, for coming. And as Jeffrey said, you guys are doing awesome work. I just had two questions, like Betty. So the first question is sort of just a general question. Do you have a sense of where your clients are coming from? Are they coming from the community? Are they coming, some are coming from outside the community? Or do you have a sense of sort of who you're serving?
We do, and it's both. So we have, yes, definitely people who are in the neighborhood. In our pantry program, we do, we try to remain true to our desire and our stated mission to welcome everyone who comes to our doors. We do collect a little bit of demographic information from our pantry clients, just because we have to for the city. So we do know from that people are coming from all 5 boroughs and Long Island. Yes.
Great. Okay. And then my second question, but it sounds like you're so at the beginning stages of this elevator project, but I know you had said that you hope once it gets started to have the programs be open throughout the elevator expansion. And I guess I just wondered, is there any thought being given to wanting to find a temporary space or some space that you could use so that the programs aren't impacted, you know, whether it's for storing the food or serving the food or whatever. So I just wondered if you would be, if that's one thing you would be looking for.
We might. So our hope is we will not have to do that, because we've been so clear, certainly on the church side of what's happening. We're pretty confident that whatever happens in the nave of the church, which is, you know, if you were there before the pandemic, you know that we served people at tables. We don't do that anymore. It's outside, and partially now it looks kind of like a Costco warehouse during the week because we've got so much in there. We're pretty confident that we're not going to have to stop that. When the elevator starts, when all of the construction begins, it may be that we will have to find alternate cooking prep space where we're doing that offsite and then bringing it, and or office space. I know after the fire there was a trailer. I mean, we're really hoping that that does not have to happen, and we will be, if that is necessary, of course, we're open to it in a temporary capacity.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks, Katie. David?
Thank you for the presentation, Reverend Pearson. Am I correct that the church is a New York City landmark?
It is. You are correct.
Okay, so I would expect that we'll be seeing a presentation material once it's developed. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, yes. Some of them are staff approval only, and some will be, you know, for us to come back to you all. And again, as it evolves, we'll know more about that. We're just in the beginning stages of those filings.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Sabrina? And
Sorry.
Matt Green will have the last question, just so folks know. Sabrina?
Sorry, my dog's barking. I'm sorry, I had problems with the connection prior, so I don't know if maybe this question was asked, but first, thank you for your presentation. And then I was curious, you mentioned that now you have about an increase in folks that you serve. Do you know how much is that increase? And my other question, I'm sorry, he just made it home and he just wants to say hi. And my other question is like your funding. How is this coming from? I know that it's mainly from donations, or how are you able to vet so many New Yorkers? And again, thank you for your work.
So yes, our increase, the pantry program, when we started it, it was 60 families, and now it's every week 600. So that's, and by families, you know, like I don't like to use this term because it's so impersonal, but units, people who are coming to us. The hot meal service has stayed basically steady and stable throughout. However, we have added to that bringing meals to people who are outside of Moynihan, Penn Station, Port Authority, people who can't come to us or don't know about us. And we have our information in these hot breakfast sandwiches that get made early every morning and then brought out to people. And we hope that we'll see them subsequently. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Funding comes from everywhere. We are really very, very grateful that the city has pledged $1.5 million to this project. And that is giving us a lot of really exciting momentum as we go into it. But we are, if you're on our mailing list, you know that we've got our hat in our hand all the time. We're seeing more people with the people who are being bussed in from Texas. I mean, we are feeling that. We are seeing that. We are seeing those families coming in off of Port Authority. They're coming to us. They want IDs, which we can give them, even though we have to explain that they're really not official. They help, but only to a certain amount. They want work. We're just really trying as best we can. And so you're seeing some of that in our communications. And so it's individuals, it's government, it's corporations and foundations, and we are grateful for all of it.
Thanks, Reverend and Sabrina, for the question. Matt?
Thanks, Jeffrey. Hi, Reverend Pearson. It's nice to see you. My question was also about funding, and it sounded like this was about a $5 million capital project. So great to hear that you already have some money committed to this. And I was just curious if there is like an official fundraiser, if there is a capital campaign that you all have to help support this project. Is that something that you have ongoing and information that could be shared?
It will be shared, yes. And we have a director of development and communications, and we're working with consultants who we're very, very close to finalizing our case for support. They've been doing interviews with people and pulling that together. And then the idea is that, we'll have the silent phase and then we'll officially launch after the new year.
Terrific.
Yeah,
thanks.
we will definitely share, and if anyone wants more information, you can always contact me or our Chief Operating Officer, Michael Otley, or Nicole Guerra, but we can, get anyone information who wants it. And of course, any details, maybe someone forgot to ask this evening, or in a couple of months, you say, I wonder what the update is, please reach out. We are always really happy to talk to people about this or anything else about Holy Apostle Soup Kitchen.
Thanks, Matt. And thanks to you, Reverend, for sharing all this information tonight. I think there's a couple of more formal things that will happen as David raised, given the landmark status of the church. Of course, we'll expect a presentation accordingly on any changes or whatever will come through in terms of how things will make their way onto or around the structure. It's great to hear about the lighting. And as always, thank you for your service to our community, for those that are trying to find home in our community. And for your commitment to making New Yorkers' lives better each day. So we look forward to the next updates, and best of luck in making it all happen.
Thank you. And thank you again for the time, everyone.
Sure. Thanks for being here. Okay. Pausing to find my screen here. Jessica, public session time. As I mentioned, folks, I see a couple of hands up. We're going to start with those who signed up in advance. And Jessica, the floor is yours for the public session.
Great, thank you, Jeffrey. As all of you know, or as many of you know, we have our public session, which allows for people to ask questions or comment, during this period. You have 2 minutes. People have signed up in advance. I believe we start with Tom Lunke, and then we have Melody Bryant. And for our 2 attendees who have raised their hand, I just want to acknowledge that we see you. That's Pamela Wolf and Lisa Wager. Oh, we have for a second. And Carrie, will add you to the list. And in the future, if anybody else cares to join, you can sign up in advance. So we'll start with, do we have Tom?
Tom came over, I believe. Tom, you with us? You have to unmute.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
Forgot to unmute.
No problem, Tom. I'm going to start your 2 minutes now.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm just here to support Melody Bryant and her efforts to reach out to the larger community as well as the community on the street that live on West 22nd Street between 7th and 8th Avenues to alert everyone to a community visioning workshop that will be led by the Collective for Community, Culture, and the Environment on October 15th from 12 to 2 p.m. at St. Paul's German Evangelical Lutheran Church, which is 315 West 22nd Street, and refreshments will be provided. I just wanted also to add that I did some, just quick research about our zip code 10011. We have a population of 50,000. Only 12% own one or more vehicles and 4% go to work by vehicle. Just to let people know, the population has increased by about 10,000 residents since the 1990s through a number of rezonings that have occurred. And the number of hotels and office buildings have increased dramatically. So we could be looking at an additional 10,000 people that come in on a daily basis. So the streets have not changed in size, but the population and density has. So what we're hoping is that we can further strengthen the designated open street as a community resource. It is a public street, so we would like to see more opportunities for pedestrian use of the street. And we encourage everyone to attend this visioning workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. All right, we'll turn it to Melody on, I believe, the same topic, and Melody, will start your time now.
Hi, thank you so much. Well, Tom said pretty much everything I would like to also say. If you live on West 22nd, or if you come here, I'm not muted, am I?
Are we here?
Okay, if you come here to walk or to help your child learn how to ride a bike, or if you live in the neighborhood and have your lunch here, we welcome you to this event. I also excuse me?
Sorry, Carl, if you can mute. Sorry, go ahead, Melody.
I just wanted to also announce another event that's going on an open street in Chelsea, which is this coming Saturday on West 21st between 9th and 10th Avenue. The Opera Next Door is going to be presenting Menotti's opera, a full opera, The Old Maid and the Thief. And it'll be live music performed on a stoop with the audience seated in the street. People are advised to bring their own chairs. I've heard this opera company and they're really, really good. So nothing beats the human voice in open air. The flyer can be found on CB4's Dropbox. I don't know, I can't really see the camera here, but so, we're moving ahead on open streets in Chelsea, and it's really great to have them. And we really thank CB4 for all of your support. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Melody. We have 3 people who have signed up that I don't think are here yet, but we do have 2 phone numbers. So I just want to confirm that we don't have Jaden Williams, Megan Menshing. Actually, it's 2 people. Are either of those people here with us? No? Okay. Then, Jesse, do we have Carrie with us?
Carrie should be on, I believe.
Great. Carrie?
Hi, everyone. My name's Carrie. I'm with Hudson River Parks Trust, and I'm just going to share a little bit on our fall programming. We had a really eventful summer. I hope many of you were able to enjoy some of our programs in the park, but the fun continues into the fall. So our native aquarium, which is called Hudson River Parks Wet Lab, continues to be open on Tuesdays and Thursdays until the end of October from 3 to 6, and then also on Sundays until the end of September. And that's from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. You can also sign up for our local shoreline ecology tours at Pier 26 Tide Deck on Sundays and on Wednesdays, also until the end of September. And starting tomorrow at Little Island, we'll be leading Little Island's art cart and sharing STEM in fun, hands-on ways. And you can join us for the rest of the month on Thursdays there. Our fall field trips are also open now, so schools, principals, and teachers can sign up for fish ecology, plankton microscopy, water quality field trips in the park, and we're serving classes from K through college. And then specific to CB4, Pier 84 dog run opened yesterday after its summer renovation. So now we're featuring spray areas, more seating, and improved surface. And Hudson River Park's four-legged friends can participate in a celebration with treats for pups and humans. And that's happening on Thursday. It was moved because of rain. So tomorrow from 4:30 to 6:30. And then our work at Chelsea Waterside also continues, and we're hoping to reopen. We're getting ready to reopen by the end of the month, our dog run. And just to conclude, we're looking forward to our Submerged Marine Science Festival. That will be October 14th and 15th at Pier 84. And our program will conclude with release of the fishes on October 27th at the Parks Wet Lab at Pier 40. So if you have any questions, as always, feel free to email or call us. And our email is education@hrpt.ny.gov. And thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. We'll go to Pamela Wolf, followed by Lisa Wager, and then Marty, I see your hand as well. And then we'll conclude our public session. Pamela?
Hi there. Hi, everybody. I signed up to speak about the Till buildings on 22nd Street and 7th Avenue, the southeast corner. I don't think I need to go into much explanation because CB4 has been dealing with this for so long. AAFE is the contractor who's doing the work. The sidewalk bridge is being installed as we speak, just about over the last week, and today was a pretty critical day in that installation. I came past, and I have to say that I am very disappointed in what is being built. I understand that the city has certain requirements. I think that we need to find a way to get around some of those. They have created basically a tunnel. It's 50 feet long on the 7th Avenue frontage and another 25, I think, on the, or at least on the 22nd Street side. It is a tunnel made of plywood. It takes over most of the sidewalk, leaving a very thin strip of sidewalk immediately next to the bike lane. No one in their right mind is going to want to walk through this tunnel. The lighting that they've installed is pathetic. It's so inadequate that it's not worth talking about. It just needs to be totally done again. This is not what we talked about. Jesse remembers, I'm sure, at the groundbreaking ceremony, what promises were made about how this bridge, this sidewalk equipment was not going to obscure and create this kind of hazard. We know all about what happens in those tunnels when nobody's looking. This is not acceptable, not tolerable. I don't know where we go from here. I've contacted Eric Botcher's office about this and sent a bunch of pictures, and I sent some to Jesse and Jessica and you guys. So I don't know what to do, but that's the issue that I'm bringing to us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela.
I can jump in real quickly, Pamela. Obviously, we can follow up. Let's circle back with and bring everybody back together on it for sure.
Thank you. I think the more noise we can make about it and the faster we do it, because this is a subcontractor who builds these things. it's not AFI. They've subbed the work to a scaffolding outfit. And once they finish this job and they're gone, it will be hell to try to make a difference. I think what they really need to do is install a chain link fence with a mesh fence behind it, a mesh screening behind it, in order to create to protect people from anything that might fall, which is a little silly because it's below the bridge. But the visibility, we have to find a way to get it visible. This is just not going to work. Plus, the thing sits over most of the sidewalk, forcing people directly into the bike lane. And today, as I stood there, a good 20 or 30 people simply walked out into the bike lane, back to the traffic, the flow of bicycles. There was a guy with his stroller in front of SOS that nearly got clobbered. That's in one of the pictures, actually. So this is urgent. And
Thank you, Pamela.
Thank you, Jesse.
You're welcome.
And thanks, everybody.
Lisa, you're up.
Thanks. So hi, I hope everyone's had a good summer. My name is Lisa Wager. I'm the Director of Government Community Relations at the Fashion Institute of Technology, the SUNY college that's on 27th between 7th and 8th, with a residence hall on 31st Street, west of 9th, which is in the CB4 district. Classes at FIT started on Monday, the 29th. The college is in full swing. The campus is buzzing. We have retained vaccination and indoor masking requirements. And this year, a lot of our public programming returns to being in person. You can find that information and other exciting events on our online calendar, Instagram account, and Facebook. Shoes, Anatomy, Identity, and Magic, a new exhibition, opened at the museum at FIT on last Thursday, and it's going to be up through the end of December. The show explores our social, physical, and psychological relationship with shoes. And it begins with a pair of baby shoes, indicating how shoes accompany us through the journey of life. It's a really interesting show. And in addition to pretty sumptuous visuals, there's a lot to think about. The theme of anatomy emphasizes how we stand and move differently when we wear, say, sneakers instead of stilettos, and how peep-toe shoes and thigh-high boots also draw attention to different parts of one's anatomy. The theme of identity emphasizes how we tend to associate different shoe styles and brands with different types of people. And the theme of magic emphasizes how we may unconsciously believe that the right pair of shoes will change our lives. The exhibition features 300 of the 5,000 pairs of shoes, boots, sandals, and sneakers in the museum's permanent collection, aka the closet. It's accompanied by a book that has been published by Taschen. And remember that FIT, the museum at FIT is free and open to the public, with expanded hours till 8 p.m. Wednesday through Friday, and Saturday and Sunday till 5. Also, one other note to report in the bragging column, FIT's advertising and digital design program was ranked number 3 in the world by the One Club for Creativity, which is the industry's preeminent advertising and interactive design student competition. So great to see you, and welcome to September. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Marty, did you have something? Did you want to speak? Your hand was up. It is. Okay, if you want to unmute, we'll give you your 2 minutes.
Didn't want to speak. Thank you.
Okay. It looks like Betty, you do want to speak. Okay. And then after Betty, we're going to conclude our public session.
I just wanted to ask Lisa a question.
Oh.
Is she still here? Yes. Hi. Hi.
Yeah.
I love the museum exhibits. I go to them all the time. I live on 28th Street and walk to the subway often. And we've been experiencing the great construction on 28th on both sides of the street.
Yeah.
As you know, when do you estimate the construction for FIT is going to be completed?
Well, we think that occupancy will be fall of 23. I think, 24. Wow. I think it's fall of 24 instead of spring of 20. You know, I'm gonna have to look that up.
That's
I
okay.
think it's this coming fall, but I can't quite believe, I mean, we've already topped off the building. And we're gonna be putting up the sides and everything, but I can't believe we'll be ready with interior finishes. But anyway, I think you're probably more concerned about when the outside part that's disruptive will end. And that should end in the summer.
Oh, next summer, we'll
This
be
coming
able to
summer.
walk on the sidewalks again.
I'm not sure when the bridge comes down, but why don't I find out and I can get back to you. I can send Jesse an email and he can update you.
Okay, thank you.
And you know, the other side, they're really whipping along there. They're
Yeah,
doing
they're-
occupancy in the HAP building. That's the two matching the condo rental thing. They're moving into occupancy, and the other building that's closer to 8th is about to begin marketing.
No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Thank you, Lisa. And Chair, I believe that concludes our public session.
Thank you, Madam Vice First Chair. And I would like to note, based on Lisa's remarks, that she talks about where all the buildings for FIT are, but then she mentioned a 5,000 piece shoe collection, the closet, and she didn't tell us where the closet is located, because maybe there'd be a line outside of that to expand collections. But anyway, shoe digression. Adoption of the agenda. Any questions on the agenda as proposed, which has a couple of new items? Hearing no questions, I'll take a motion to adopt, please.
So moved.
Thanks, Joe. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any objections? The agenda is adopted. On to the minutes from our July meeting. Any questions on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to adopt the minutes from our July meeting.
So moved.
Thanks, Joe. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Christine. Any objections? Okay, the minutes are adopted. Ordinarily, this next portion of our meeting would be reports from our elected officials. We are expecting Borough President Mark Levine to join us in about 15 minutes from now at 7:30. However, ordinarily, we would not be holding a September full board meeting pending items on the agenda. However, tonight we have a ULURP action. And as many folks know, ULURP is one of the very formal and prescribed actions the board gets to take. And our response to city planning was due before our October meeting. In the interest of keeping our agenda short as it is, I asked the elected officials that were set to speak this month to forego their time, so we could keep our meeting as short and sweet as possible. However, I want to acknowledge them and thank them by name for that. We'll be hearing from the borough president a bit later, but Councilmember Gail Brewer, as always, State Senator Brad Hoylman, State Senator Liz Kruger, Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, District Attorney Alvin Bragg, and Public Advocate Jumaane Williams. We appreciate the time to focus on business this evening, and we look forward to your future reports. And as I also mentioned, if you do have a report you want to share with the board, please pass it along to Jesse, and we will circulate that to the members. So when the borough president does join us, we are going to pause on our agenda to give him the floor. But in the meantime, we will move on with the item on our agenda. And I'm going to pass it over to our esteemed district manager, Mr. Bodine.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jesse Bodine, District Manager for Community Board 4. I will keep it as short as possible. As Jeffrey already mentioned, this in-person meeting update. So currently, both the state and the city have extended their emergency orders. So they're in effect to the approximately the end of September. We'll know in a week or so whether they were going to extend them past that into October. If they are not, just a reminder that we will be then going into a hybrid format in which the committees will be meeting in the district office, and where people can participate completely and fully in a remote setting as well. That's all on our website, all the policy, the hybrid policy, all of that. What over the next 2 months, CB4 will be drafting their statement of district needs and budget requests for the fiscal year 2024. So each committee will be discussing and voting on their budget requests. So in September and October, we already sent out a survey as we did last year. We will be pushing that out again. And so please, from members of the public, please attend your committees that you're interested in, and this is the time and place to try to really advocate for specific things that we can help advocate to the city and to the city council. So for August committee schedule, sorry, September's committee schedule, we're out of there. For the month of September, all committees will be meeting at their regular times with the exception of the executive committee, which will be meeting on Wednesday, September 28th, to work around the Jewish holidays. October, just to give a heads up about October, because October is going to be very different. October full board will be meeting on Thursday, October 6th. We normally meet on the first Wednesday. We have to meet on Thursday, October 6th. Arts, Culture, Education, and Street Life will be meeting October 24th at the end of the month instead of at the beginning of the month. And Executive Committee will be meeting Tuesday, October 25th. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Jesse. So a couple of scheduling amendments there, in particular calling out 2 months in a row of Executive Committee meeting changes. All right, continuing on the agenda is the report from the chair. That's me. Some updates from the past month. While we didn't have committee meetings, I once again want to thank BLP for convening as they always do during August to keep things going. And then a whole bunch of small meetings that were had accordingly. Clinton Health Kitchen Land Use and Housing, Health and Human Services attended an emergency meeting and walkthrough with HPD at 410, 412 West 46th Street. The board has been very involved with these sites for gosh, I feel like it's been all of 22 at this point, as demolition is proceeding on one building while we will work to preserve another. The council member's office has been very involved, and the board continues to stay involved with the tenants and the city on this issue. Chelsea Land Use provided testimony at the LPC hearing regarding 601 West 26th Street. Clinton House Kitchen Land Use continues to meet with the council member's office regarding the DEP site, which is the affordable housing project at 707 10th Avenue. There was actually a hearing scheduled that was supposed to happen. The ULURP hearing was supposed to happen yesterday, but that has since been postponed. When that hearing gets rescheduled, the board will indeed be providing testimony at that hearing, as is our custom. CB4 leadership and WPE held a briefing. We met with Con Edison regarding their operation on Pier 98. Con Ed has a power plant basically on Pier 98, which is off 58th Street in the Hudson. It's within the Hudson River Park jurisdiction. It's DEC, the Department of Environmental Conservation, is the state agency that oversees Con Ed, and they will both be attending our Waterfront Parks and Environment Committee meeting tomorrow night. Just a little bit of background here for the reasoning why. There was a lawsuit filed. The New York Times did a piece on this story, and basically Board 4 is on a fact-finding mission from our friends at Hudson River Park Trust, Con Edison, and DEC. And I will say that the briefing we had with Con Ed last week, the council member's office was there, as well, Botcher and Brewer, and a slew of representatives from Con Ed to begin to share data and to really understand what the concerns are about the pier, and to see if there's anything more we need to know as it relates to the operations there. MTA will be presenting on the proposed subway substation at West 28th Street at the Transportation Planning Committee this month, which is on Wednesday, September 21st. Mark your calendars if that's of interest to you at all. Other ongoing and upcoming working group meetings, the Port Authority Bus Terminal Replacement Working Group reconvened earlier this month. The port chose an architect of record Norman Foster. So we wanted to get back on the books with them to make sure that the board has an opportunity to meet with those architects. We've proposed a walking tour and also getting our regular meetings back on the books with them. Bert, anything else to add in terms of that working group at this point? Okay, thank you. Penn Station area civic and land use work project. There's been a number of announcements from the governor's office. The GPP was indeed adopted. I believe I provided the bulk of the updates at our July meeting, all of which happened before then. The next step in terms of action is that Board 4 has been offered seats on the public realm working group that has been that was pushed really hard by our board and was one of the things we gained as a part of the process. Right now we have at least 2 seats on that board as it relates to the streetscape and public realm planning working group around that. Stay tuned for more info on that. Right now it seems there's a whole bunch of small announcements happening around Penn, but we are awaiting more news from the state on any next steps as it relates to the bigger picture there. Cannabis working group, the new working group that we convened, it's been a busy month for the state and the city for cannabis. I know the working group met earlier this summer, and that work will continue. Jesse Greenwald is the chair of that group. Jesse, is there anything short and sweet to add from the meeting that was had earlier this summer?
No updates really. We're just getting underway, but we'll have probably more updates next time we all convene.
Great, thank you. It's September, which means it's budget season. And I'm looking at our second vice chair, Leslie, because it's budget time. And so the budget task force will be meeting in September and October. And also committees, stay tuned for your directives, which will be to inform us and take up issues that are relevant to the budget, so we can make sure those are a part of our budget task force work and make sure our asks to the city are relevant to what the needs are on the ground. And then finally, on my report tonight, it feels weird to announce this, but it's time to convene the nominating committee. Board elections and nominating committee need to convene. This committee is a part of our bylaws. And so accordingly, they will be meeting throughout September and October to conduct interviews and provide the board with a recommended slate of candidates for the executive officer positions, chair, first vice chair, second vice chair, and the co-secretary positions. Any member interested in running for one of the positions should contact our district manager, Jesse Bodine. And tonight I am announcing the committee, which will be made up of the following members. Sabrina Revron will be the chair of the committee. Roberta Barnett, Christine Bertay, Paul Devlin, Dolores Rubin, Hector Vasquez, and Alice Wang will be the other committee members of the nominating committee. So again, as per our bylaws, they'll be convening over the next 2 months. There'll be meetings, interviews. If anybody is interested in running, please notify Jesse. Reports will happen in the November meeting, and then there'll be a vote in December. Any questions on my report or other bits of board business for Jesse or me? All right. A pregnant pause with hopes that it would be 7:30 and the borough president would be here before I jump into our board business this evening. BLP, Frank and Bert, I pass it to you for the 3 items on your list.
Right. As you can tell from the fact that there are only 3 items, it was relatively quiet for us in August as well. These 3 were all pretty straightforward, so I don't feel the need to break them out, but we'll answer any questions.
Any questions for Frank on items 1, 2, or 3? Okay. I should have flagged at the beginning, but we're maintaining our standard voting procedure as we have over the X amount of months on the squares that will vote at the end by roll call on the items. Chelsea Land Use, Jessica and Carrie for the ULURP action.
Yeah, I'm happy to take this. I think this might be a little challenging to do in 2 segments, but it is what it is. So we'll just get started, and when the borough president joins, I assume we'll pause.
Well, yeah, we'll pause and give him sort of the standard time, but we'll get through, that, yeah, we'll make that work.
Okay. As Jeffrey mentioned, excuse me, we have the ULURP application. This is for the relocation of the EMS station that has been at 23rd Street for over 10 years following the closure of St. Vincent's. This may feel a little bit like deja vu because you'll remember at the July meeting, we also reviewed a letter connected to this action. So very specifically, EMS, rather FDNY came to the Chelsea Land Use July meeting, presented the plans for the new site at 613 West 29th Street. And we, as a committee, had decided that we would take two actions. One would be to approve the ULURP application in a letter, which is before everyone tonight, as well as send a letter to electeds and key stakeholders about the need to allow this project to come to fruition, which would require Amtrak, which is currently holding this site for debris removal for the Amtrak expansion plans, the gateway plans. And so that letter was approved by the board at our July meeting and has since been sent out. And in that time, we were able to pull together this letter to reflect our support of the ULURP, as well as some other requests that we hope will be considered in approving of this site to be used for this purpose. So I want to acknowledge that we did receive some friendly amendments. Thank you, Betty and Mike, as always, for the close read, as well as from Joe, who, among others, I'm sure, but has worked on this for well over, probably the full decade in recognition that the temporary site was intended to be that temporary, and being an outdoor site, among other things, was never appropriate for long-term use. So that is the letter that you have before you, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Jessica. Christine?
Yes, that's the great letter, and I agree with you that it should happen earlier. I was wondering whether it would make sense to bring that paragraph a little further up in the letter to discuss that it should happen earlier, and that's one of our asks. And then the second, I noticed that they said they are going to have a 44 feet garage entrance and that seems like enormous in comparison to other, and this is only for the trucks, not for the parking. So altogether, 50% of their frontage is going to be, curb cut. And I think that's an issue. I think we should challenge the 44 feet and also require that in front of all of that, there will be, speed bumps, etc. for safety.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. I think we should hear other votes, but that's
Sure.
helpful. I noted them. I do want to just say that when we asked about things specific to the design of the space, FDNY alerted us that essentially this, the drawings for this space are consistent with other EMS stations that they have built across the city, and that there's essentially like a model right now for EMS stations. And so I don't know, we'd have to go back to the tape to see if the 44 feet is an example of that or not. But when we asked other questions regarding why certain things were as they were, we were instructed that this is the current preferred design for such stations.
Yeah, but I think we need to challenge that because city planning has been, has provided new guidelines that was 5 years ago to reduce the lengths of curb cuts. And especially when you are adjacent to a residential building, and maybe, the fire department has done those things that way forever, and maybe it's time for them to change.
Understood. Joe, and then Matt.
Sure. So first on the curb cut issue, I just want to say that I sent to Jessica today a presentation from 2018. Our board has actually reviewed this in the past and went through that back and forth with the fire department, Christine, and understood that what they're doing is consistent with their practice, but also it's the turning radius of certain kinds of vehicles. It's not just one ambulance, it's multiple vehicles. And we spent a lot of time on that about 4 years ago. So I think I would recommend that horse has left the barn because they gave us details, and I can dig them up and I can send them to you too. But
Okay.
I'm speaking to the broader issue, which is the call on a letter to relocate the construction someplace else. This is the actual opening on the New York Manhattan side where the debris is coming out of the tunnel. So I think I didn't realize, Jessica, until you emailed me recently, that we sent this letter out asking for the whole thing to be relocated. I don't believe that's going to happen. And I'm concerned that we're making an ask that is, people will say yes, 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 our electeds, but it will not really do anything about it. What we did achieve at our last go at this was the agreement with the Gateway Project people represented by the Port Authority to temporarily relocate EMS to a garage somewhere on the west side at the expense of the Gateway Project. And they took us on a tour of multiple buildings, the Port Authority. We chose a location. We did this with the council member's office. It was very, very helpful. And then the whole thing was canceled because the governor of New Jersey pulled out of the Gateway Project. So I know the committee has acted. I know there's a letter that's gone out, but I think we can do something to reconcile this in order to get something that can be achieved. Securing a location for 4 or 5 years in a garage as a line item in the Gateway multi-billion-dollar project is nothing. But asking them to move their opening of the tunnel and construction staging and debris on the location, I think, in my opinion, is impossible. So I just asked for this to be thought about or considered tonight to see if we can modify that, saying, if it can't be, that would be our preferable thing, but if it can't be done, here's the solution so we can reconcile the public need for this EMS station, which, by the way, folks, serves 62nd Street to West 12th Street, everything west of Fifth Avenue to the Hudson River. That's what the station is for. And the idea that it's got to be open air under the High Line is just ridiculous. So I'm hoping we can just at least discuss this tonight.
Thank you, Joe. I just want to, I think that should absolutely be on the table. I just want to acknowledge, I think even before the more recent news that's come out about the even further potential delays to Gateway, we were already looking at a 10-year timeline. So I don't know that it's a temporary 5-year plan. I don't know if that changes I don't think it changes anything. I just want for folks to know that we're really talking about something that's probably much more extensive, which is in fact why I think the committee felt that pressure was needed, because it is not reasonable, even though this is really about the ULURP and we need to keep our eye focused on allowing this space to ultimately become the appropriate use for EMS, and this ULURP action has to pass in order for that to happen. But that in the meantime, there shouldn't be an open air EMS facility, during that period. But let's hear it, Matt, and then we'll go to Marty.
Sure. So my question is around the proposed mitigation. And I think to Joe's point, whether that mitigation is alternative sites or looking at the staging area, I think urging whatever power that be, in the letter, it says the city to provide a timeline for finding an alternative staging site. Whether that's the city, I don't know, but it sounds like it could be the burden on Amtrak or Port Authority to really engage on that mitigation. Again, it's a good question that Joe's bringing up, whether that's an alternative site or whether that's a new staging area. I think that entity, whether it's the city or another, maybe it's someone who has oversight at the federal level over Amtrak, really be in charge of that, needs to be discussed. So that was the point that I wanted to raise.
Great. We'll look into figuring out adopting language that is inclusive of the appropriate parties. Marty?
Just want to, if I may, reiterate an earlier comment. I'm indignant about the delay of moving this important station for the protection of our community. So that paragraph, I really believe, needs to come to the front, even with the complications that I've just heard the other speakers talk about. When the letter goes out, the action needs to be expeditious.
Okay, thank you, Marty. Betty?
Yeah, I agree with Matt and Joe, so I won't repeat that. I do have, like what I read in the newspaper, is that the Gateway project is to be 20 2035, the delay is even greater than originally thought. And I don't know what that puts us to, but I think maybe that should be in the letter, so we get some context for the project. And I like talking about the mitigations and different options for the mitigation. That's it. And it's a wonderful letter for the most part, because it is a complicated topic and it covers all this complex history that we've been through. So anyway, thank you for the letter.
Thank you, Betty. Mike, excuse me.
Yeah, hi. Well, I thank you for the letter earlier in my email to you. I neglected to get to the substance of some of the stuff. I just want to agree fully with everything that Joe said. And one wonders whether we should put this in there at all in the volume that it speaks, right? It seems impossible to make these adjustments without a lot of other input. And so I'm just saying, maybe we tone it down a bit. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Joe, back to you.
Yeah, I just had a further thought. We actually did know that there was this conflict back in 2018. We knew it at that point in time. And one of our problems that we haven't noted here is that the FDNY dragged its feet so long that if this had moved quicker, this could have been in the ground, and therefore they would have had to work around it, or they would have started construction, say they were filing construction, and the mitigation would have been temporary offsite relocation, because there's two public projects conflicting. I just think that we're not going to win ever on this one if it's our little EMS versus the largest public, construction project in the nation. So we have to do something that speaks to mitigate this. We don't want this just approved and then to sit fallow till 2035, that we want mitigation now so they can use this site, and the mitigation should come from the problem source, which is Amtrak led by the port, or however it's structured now. I know Jesse told me it's slightly different. And as opposed to just saying, move the tunnel. It makes us seem like we're not being realistic. That's all. So I really say, given this, if we can't move it, then we need you to mitigate it, because we need the service on the west side of Manhattan, and really stress that in the letter.
Thank you, Joe. I do want to just acknowledge, I'm not hearing any concerns about the ULURP itself, right? The change of use of this current space. So I think all of these other things really can be worked in to the letter, and we may come back to you, particularly those who have been vocal here on this call, for some assistance in making sure that language is captured correctly. But I would venture that much of this is doable. Katie, and then Carrie.
And by the way, though, it is no consideration, right? This site is not being sold. It's zero consideration. That's what we negotiated.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Katie?
Thanks. I just want to make sure, because I think I agree with what Joe was saying, but I want to make sure that I understand what Joe is saying. So I guess it's a question for Joe or anybody else who might know. So my understanding, so the way this letter reads right now, it is asking for an alternative site for Amtrak's tunnel construction. And I believe, wait, okay, Jesse, go.
Just for clarity's sake, not the entire construction.
No, right.
This is literally one little section.
Right.
The entire, the construction is literally half a block to 3/4 of the block. We are asking for this one little portion to not be used for staging or debris removal or whatever. But yes. I just want to get for clarity's sake, we're not asking
Thank you. You're right.
entire Hudson River Tunnel project to find another. That's not.
Fair enough. Okay, but and I think, Joe, what I heard you saying is that even that reduced ask might be too big, And that what we should do is add to this letter to say, first, we would love an alternative site for the debris removal stuff from Amtrak. But if that's not possible, then we want an alternative site that is not open air for EMS. Is that right?
Right, because the construction of EMS is directly delayed by construction staging on the EMS site to be acquired, like to make the link very clear. That's the mitigation.
Okay, yeah, then I think that sounds great. I guess my only concern is, though, if what Betty just said that she read in the paper is that this site might not be available for EMS to come back and build its thing for another 10 years, it just sounds disappointing that our EMS site might not be able to be official for a long time. But I think at least we should make it clear, not just be asking for one thing in this letter, but be asking for, if not A, then B. And yes, Jessica, I think we all support the ULURP. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I'm going to turn it to Carrie, but I also just want to thank Carrie briefly. Just indulge me. She helped tremendously with this letter while I was off gallivanting. So thank you, Carrie.
I'm glad you got a chance to gallivant. Everybody needs that. So this is a really tricky one, actually. It's not just a simple ULURP, for me anyway. It was, I'm the only person on the committee who abstained because of this timeline. So I will say that we had Councilmember Botcher's office in our meeting, and we had DCAS in our meeting, and there was no proposed alternative site. So that doesn't mean that there can't be, I suppose, in the future, but right now we're looking at 2035 for this EMS station to actually be in this location. So I'm a little, I would love to hear some ideas or thoughts, and that can be separately via email as to what kind of language we're asking for here. But it seems to me that if we don't somehow get through reaching out to our elected officials who were very frustrated on this issue, and Councilmember Botcher's office said that they have tried, they were very frustrated with the city. I'm not sure what the other options are and that we should propose. So maybe, Joe, we can talk separately or something, but I think that if we want that language in the letter, we just need to acknowledge the fact that DCAS was on the phone with us or at the meeting with us, and they had nothing. So so I just want to put that out there as more context for what we're trying to deal with, all in the larger context that we all want this to happen and want this ULURP approved. Thanks.
Thank you, Carrie. Bert?
Hi, the fact that DCAS had nothing shouldn't stop us from proposing, okay? And who knows, they say they have nothing, but what do they have in the second drawer? Not the first drawer, but what do they have in the second drawer or their third drawer, okay? We have gone and looked at other sites as temporary places for the EMS. There are sites out there, okay? The fact that the temporary site on 23rd Street and 10th Avenue has been temporary for at least 10 years, okay? So that shows that you could have a temporary site, an adequate temporary site, but we're looking for an adequate one for another 10 years or 13 years till we can count to 35, maybe they'll be finished a little earlier, okay? But there are alternative sites. I don't want to be stopped because DCAS says there's nothing out there. We looked at sites. The question is, how do you get those sites? Who confirms them? Who agrees to this? Who pays for it? That's the issue. Not that there's no physical sites out there. There are.
Okay, thank you, Bert. Lowell, I think you're up.
There's one other point here that
CB4 is already on record when, I guess this was 2018 or 7, I don't even remember how far back it goes.
18.
The Hudson River Park Act was amended to allow the construction for Gateway to go through the park at 28th Street. And we voted in support of that amendment. You know, we had a letter in support of the amendment to the Hudson River Park Act that would allow Gateway to come through at this spot. So for us to turn around now and say, well, please find a different staging spot for, you know, your construction is a little disingenuous. That is a straight line from where the tube is going to come out of the Hudson to the 31st Street terminus of this new tube, which is an aside is why part of this Penn Station stuff is ridiculous because it was approved years ago. I think it's disingenuous to put that in there. I think we are better off. What I heard Joe saying is, yes, we want we approved the ULURP. We want the 29th Street site for the EMS, but we can't wait till 2035 for it to move off of 23rd Street. And it should be up to Amtrak or whoever else to find a new temporary location for the EMS site, not to go into the whole let's move thing, because we kind of already approved that.
Yeah, I think there was I hear that, and I think we can acknowledge that. I think to just suggest that Amtrak is a low, like to say Amtrak just, you need to find a new spot didn't feel like enough firepower to get this done. And that we needed to do more to rally more people in support of finding the alternative location. But as Carrie was saying, I think we can brainstorm offline about how we do that in a way that does allow for a solution.
All right, but Jess, I don't think the way to rally support is to come out with a disingenuous request to move something that we approved 4 years ago.
Sorry, and I hear that. I guess I think I'm saying we will, whereas currently the letter says this is all we're asking for, the end, I think we can amend the letter to reflect alternative solutions that will address this issue over the next decade and not have us waiting until at least 2035 before the station is moved.
Can I try to clarify the process and that maybe that can wrap it up, Jessica, for you?
Sure. Gwen did raise her hand, so
I'm sorry, Gwen. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go to Gwen and then we'll come back to you, Joe. Josie, there you go. You got it, Gwen.
Sorry, I was having trouble getting it off of mute. So I think, Joe, you're probably going to say the same thing I did. We went through a big, long process of trying to figure out where it could go. And we looked at all kinds of places. And this was where it was decided it should go. It doesn't make any sense to just do it, 360 now.
Right. That's why I want to sort of clarify this discussion. First, we're talking about approving this ULURP. We want to say it in a way it's approved. However, the process is immediately frustrated because of the condemnation and the easement for construction staging by Amtrak and the Gateway Corporation. So what happened then is representatives of the Gateway Corporation hired a broker that found 12 garages in the West 30s and West 40s. We did a whole tour of them, and they looked at the garages they found plus office space for the Gateway Corporation's operations. That's how they were going to figure this out. So I think we just want to note this. This is what we did, and this is merely, we approved this siting. There's no question. However, we need a temporary location because of Gateway, and the Gateway Corporation must mitigate the 12 years that's going to be lost here. Get us a temporary indoor garage, get it outside from under the High Line. That's a sort of gestalt of it, Gwen. That's what I was getting at.
Yep.
Not touching the permanent thing. That's the permanent one. It's the temporary to get to the permanent.
Sounds good to me.
I'm almost
so we
wondering, based upon what Joe just said, I'm almost wondering if
Joe
this is
just
two
said.
letters. I'm wondering if this is two separate letters, Jessica. One approving the ULURP and then a second letter saying, okay, by separate letter, we've approved the ULURP, but we know we're not getting this site till 2035. So what are you going to do for us in the meantime?
Well, we did send that letter essentially in July, and I think we will follow up with that to say, we sent you a letter saying we needed to find an alternative solution or an alternative location. And I think there may be a subsequent administrative letter, but let's follow up on that process.
But keeping in the ULURP puts all the various parts of government on notice. This is not working.
No, understood. I was just responding to Lowell's comment about a second letter immediately. I think we just sent that letter in July. We can follow up with their offices.
But I think we need to cite what Joe is talking about, that 4 years ago, we went from site to site to site, and we have a list. Somebody has a list.
Yeah.
Now, some of those from 4 years ago may not be viable anymore. They might not exist. They may have been torn down, but still some are around, and we can go out and look for some more. Or
So-
they can go out and look for some more and pay for it.
Thank you
Can I
very much,
ask-
Paul. Yes, it's a new hand. I kind of going in circles. So Paul, is it new? Is it a suggestion at a resolution here?
Yeah, I'm thinking, Joe made the point earlier about the fact that if this was approved 10 years ago, the EMS station would be there. Gateway and Amtrak would have to find a solution. So perhaps what we do is just approve this ULURP, because the Gateway project isn't happening right now. We're still waiting for details on that.
But
So
they
we
won't, they have an easement. Their easement trumps the city's ability.
So can we just have Paul finish and then we'll
Yeah,
go
so
to
just, yeah, thanks, Jeffrey. So on the thought process, Joe, is to say, approve the ULURP and then address the EMS station separately. Because maybe if we take the step forward, we can get this in place and then go to Amtrak and Gateway and say, you need to find an alternative now that this ULURP is approved. We have an EMS station approved at this location. You have to go solve the problem. So be a little bit more straightforward in our direction there.
I think the letter is requesting the approval of the ULURP, which like that is what will happen. This other language is to lay out the concerns associated with the next steps.
But we should make a condition of the ULURP that the city works with the Gateway Corporation to find a temporary location until the site is physically available. We have to make that a condition of the ULURP. Otherwise, it doesn't tie it all together, because that's the only place we're on record publicly. And it stays with the whole land use process.
And the committee had felt strongly that this was a straight approval with no conditions. And
I'm just proposing something else, that's all.
I mean,
that would be an amendment if we want to add a condition to the letter.
So I move what I just said as an amendment.
Okay.
Well,
I'll second that.
okay, so Jessica,
Can we discuss the amendment?
yes, I was going to ask the proposer to give us the sentence or two on the amendment only that would be added to this letter, which we're now discussing because it's been seconded. Joe, could you give us the sentence on what it is you're looking to amend the letter with?
Yes, on the approval on the condition that FDNY and DCAS work with the Gateway Corporation to find a temporary relocation spot within District 4 until this site is available for construction after the construction staging for the Gateway Tunnel.
Can I add indoor, Joe, to your language?
Oh, yes,
Indoor.
yes, indoor, yes. God, yes.
And Joe, is the proposal that it be conditional upon our approval of this ULURP, or that we approve and this needs to happen?
I think it's a condition of ULURP because that helps make the.
I guess to me, it sounds like we're saying a deny unless, right? Is what that sort of your amendment proposes it to be.
Or no, I would say this should be approved with conditions because we're really in favor of it in general.
Okay. So Christine, question on the amendment, please.
Yeah, I'm confused, I guess, by what Paul and Joe have different approaches to the process. And one says we are approving the ULURP, and that gives the argument to go to Gateway to say, no, you have to fix it. Or you just approve the ULURP with the amendments and you put everything on the table now. So I don't know whether FDNY or DCAS have expressed that their strategy was one or the other. Or
I
at
have no
all.
strategy. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just asking whether one or the other strategy is better in order to get to end of job. That's all I'm asking.
We knew about this conflict when we approved the zoning in 2018. And we
No,
expected.
but Joe, I'm saying, are we better off by saying we approve the ULURP, and then once the ULURP is approved, then you have a better chance of going to Gateway and say,
They can
hey,
just put it on the shelf, Christine, as an approved, and they say we can't do anything until it'll be interagencies not bothering with each other. That's my feeling.
Can I,
Jesse?
give a look? So can I? Right now is the time to do it. Just very clear. Right now, and it's not necessarily like we have the city over a barrel or anything like that. But this is being negotiated currently between the city and Amtrak, and from on a multiple different levels, not just because of the EMS station, just the project itself. So we should do this now if we're going to do it.
okay,
Christine, does that clarify?
yes, thank you.
Do you
Thank
mind
you.
if I ask another clarifying question? So
Sure.
at our committee meeting, we had the same conversation, but I think it was more around the idea that Gateway find a different siting location. And what we're saying now is that what we want is for Gateway to be responsible for finding another temporary site for EMS while this happens. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think just as a comment, or maybe this is also a question. I mean, I do have concerns that in the vein of them finding an alternative location for debris removal for, as Jesse mentioned, this sliver of space alongside other debris removal may result in the space not actually even being able to be fully operable for traffic and other things that are required for the EMS station to function appropriately. And so an alternative site while this project is being, while this project is underway, may actually ensure that the EMS station can function appropriately and meet the needs of the community, as Joe said, between 12th and all the way along the west side. And so I think there is value in identifying an alternative location. Are there any other, sorry, Jesse, I'm going to need a little help in terms of where we are with the amendment process.
Yeah, so we're going to have to, I think we have to take a straw poll basically on the amendment because we take a roll call on the ULURP. So are there any other questions?
Can I ask?
Yes, Mr. Devlin.
I'm sorry, one other clarification question. Within the language, I'm fully now moving towards the, ULURP with condition of relocating EMS, but is there also a mechanism at which Gateway and Amtrak could figure out ways to handle the debris and staging by just reducing the footprint by 50? It's only 15,000 square feet on the entirety of the block.
We asked them that like 4 years ago, and they showed us a whole map of all the various machines out there. That's why I'm surprised we didn't see that this time. Like there was a plot plan saying this is going here, this digger thing here, this kind of scooper was a whole.
Exactly, Joe. And I remember that too. And I seem to recall that we said, well, squeeze out 15,000, like push 100 feet over and it could work. So within the conditions of relocating the EMS, I think that we may want to also think about pushing them to find alternative methods of using the site to remove their debris without negatively impacting the EMS. So maybe the EMS station could still go in there while the debris goes in, also recognizing Jessica's point that with equipment and trucks and all of that, it may make it not feasible to operate an EMS station, but I don't want to exclude the possibility of them building the EMS station there and doing everything else they need to do on site by just reducing their usage footprint by 15,000 square feet.
So to said differently, are you just suggesting, we're saying you need to find a way to make an indoor site workable, and if they select this site as that site, then that's fine? I mean, is that essentially what you're saying?
Thanks, Jessica. Yes, that's a much better way of rephrasing my verbiage. So
Okay.
thank you. Yeah, exactly. If this indoor site works, then it works.
Yeah, we just need a site.
Correct.
So it's okay.
Bert has his
I want to, that almost sounds like there's like two tracks. The amendment is something specific, and that the existing site could be the site they identify in a way.
I think that's a potential outcome, but I don't know that that's
Of the
something.
study
outcome,
for
yeah, it's an
mitigation.
outcome, right.
Got it. Bert, on the amendment.
Just quick, I just want to, as a potential outcome, we say that you got to fund and pay for a temporary site for the next 12 years. When we say that, and it's part of the negotiations, they themselves might say, cost and benefits, finding a way, well, maybe we will accept Paul's suggestion and reduce it. Or maybe we'll move it a little bit to the north. We don't know, but it's part of that outcome. But as long as we put out that we want you to pay for it and find it, that's important.
Okay, so I want to keep things moving forward here. We have an amendment that's been proposed and seconded, and that's what we've been discussing. I want to take a straw poll. First of all, I want to confirm that the co-chairs see the amendment as friendly and as sort of accepted generally in a positive way to the letter.
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. So with that, sort of a straw poll, if you will, folks, so we can have this be easily added to the letter, and which we'll take a roll call for at the end of the meeting. Jesse, does that sound fair and appropriate to you?
That's fine, as long as we can use our raised hand function, just so it's easy to see and it's recorded. That'd be great,
Okay.
not just waving your hand in the air.
So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna continue to do it. Brad, is that a question? Hold on, don't jump the gun. Let me call the question.
I'm lowering everybody's hand.
ULURP action, and God forbid here. So I'm gonna start in reverse because it's about the raise hand function. Does anyone object to the amendment? Please raise your hand if you object to the amendment. Is anyone abstaining on this amendment? Is anyone present not eligible on the amendment? Sabrina, I see a hand. So it's on the amendment. So all right, we've got two present not eligible, David and Sabrina. Thank you, David. You can put your hand down. And now for the ballpark wave, all in favor of the amendment, please raise your hands.
There you go.
All right.
All right, I have 35 hands up, Jesse. So it
Mine's up too.
passes.
Yep, we're
So
good.
the amendment has been added to the letter. With no further questions on the letter, this will be taken as a separate roll call during the vote portion of our meeting because it is a ULURP. We'll probably do 2 questions in the roll call as we've done in the past. Jessica, Carrie, any final words on the letter?
Thanks, everybody, for all of the information. I think we're both a little bit new to all of the background that is involved in this action. So we really appreciate your help on this and support. Thank you.
You guys, you don't need to say that, Carrie, you guys scaled this because of the work of the 2 of you, the committee, and the full board. So thank you for putting this together and driving this issue forward. New business, a couple of new business items this evening. Earlier this year, we convened the Sanitation Planning Working Group. That group was convened of a bunch of board members. They did a whole lot of work over a number of months, visited a number of committees, and tonight is the product of all their good work. Christine, I'm going to pass it over to you for any comments on item 5 and to address any questions.
Yeah, I want to thank all the members of the committee. It was pretty intense. We met every 2 weeks for 6 months and consulted with a lot of external experts and with the agencies, all the agencies, and came up with what we think is a simple recommendation. And just to remind you, the objective was to identify what buildings and landlords could do to reduce the amount of trash that is being put out on the sidewalk. So we were not trying to resolve everything, but just that very specific. And that was building on a report which was generated 2 years ago by the Land Use Committee. So the 6 major recommendations are the following: compact the waste and bale the paper. Recycling takes a lot of space on the sidewalk, and very few people are baling the paper or compacting their waste. And we think that would reduce the footprint. Use rodent-proof containers. I mean, it seems that it makes sense. There is no reason people wouldn't go back to using the containers. The waste management plan, which has been proposed by DSNY, is very vague right now. It doesn't have a lot of teeth, and it doesn't have a lot of specifics. And what we are suggesting is to make it very clear and simple so people know what to do. Encourage for new buildings that they build the space for 1 week of waste, which allows you to not put everything out at the same time. There should be, for very large building, what we call the staging area, which is essentially a loading dock, but it's not as big as a loading dock. I mean, it's not really intended that the truck is going to get inside. It's intended that the trash would be adjacent to the sidewalk and would be accessible to the sidewalk, but it wouldn't be on the sidewalk. And the final is to place the waste curb lane or put it no earlier than 8 p.m. That's something that the Department of Sanitation is already considering. And indeed, in our proposal, people would have the option to either put it later than 8 p.m. if it was on the sidewalk, or they could put it earlier if it was in the parking lane or inside the building. So they would have flexibility to choose when to put it out and how. So indeed, it's distributed into new buildings, and so the new buildings would be able to design, and it's distributed by small, medium, and large. So they could design differently. They would have different requirements and operate. And then obviously for existing buildings, some of them have no new design requirement because the buildings are the buildings they are, and we just use some operational requirements. And so these are essentially those 6 or 7 recommendations which are allocated through those categories. And then we sorted the recommendation by agencies to show how the agencies would have to change to adjust that. So that's it. That's what it is. And the
Thank you,
idea,
Christine. And if we can lump this item and the next one with the letter to sanitation and the council member together for any questions from anybody.
Yes.
On this, I think that makes sense.
the
Dr.
letter
DeGrasse,
is
a member of the Manhattan Swab.
right.
Marty?
I want to say that this is a fabulous letter. It is incredible the amount of solid waste knowledge this committee has gathered over a relatively short period of time, although it really doesn't feel like it's a short period of time. The letter covers so much, and it would result in such a great improvement to the city's waste management if part of it were adopted. It has also improved greatly over time in the dealing with the use of the parking lane for the possible placement of waste. It is much more of an alternative than it was before, when it was likely to be used as a placement of the waste. I am still uncomfortable with using solid waste as a place to be put in the curb and use up more parking spaces for our residents, those of them that have cars and struggle to find parking places all the time. And I felt I needed to reiterate that. I know I've said this a lot to the committee. I'm reiterating it in the context of a greatly improved letter, but it remains a problem in the letter. Thank you for these improvements. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Marty. Joe, and then Katie.
Yeah, so first, a clarification, Christine. On the table, it says new and substantially renovated buildings, in the parentheses, completed in the last 10 years. Is this going forward or going backwards?
No, you're right. This is confusing. Okay, so the numbers are going back 10 years. So the numbers, you see 2% of units, 61%. So the idea is to say, we looked at what was in the last 10 years, so give you a sense of proportion, but obviously everything will be going forward, obviously.
So this is so that should come out maybe, so it's clear that this is
Yes.
new or substantially renovated.
Yeah.
Or maybe we can just refine the numbers so they match the data that you looked at in terms of units versus like future development, and we're not comparing old development
Apples to oranges, right?
The policy we're putting into effect, right?
Right.
But then the next one I have is this question of substance, and it's only for the buildings that are small, less than 10 units. You recommend the waste compacting and paper baling machines, which when I saw this the other day, I looked into it. There's two issues. One is physically in small buildings, you don't have the space in a cellar to put those machines.
No, if you look at the small building existing, there is no requirement for that.
No, I'm saying if you're renovating it,
Yeah.
you don't have the space in a small building cellar. I have compactors.
Right.
They're much larger than you would expect, even small ones. And then I looked at this paper baling machines. They were like $5,000 or $6,000, and they were kind of large. Like I'm just saying, from a physical point of view, where would you fit them, given the fact that we have so many other requirements now for sprinkler rooms, the different kind of boilers? Like, in other words, the cellars are quite tight now because of the new requirements.
Right.
So
well, then maybe we may make an asterisk there and say it's only for the new building, not for the renovated building, right?
that might be a way to do it, because then they can go from square one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I think that works. We would do that.
Because I'll tell you, Jeffrey, I have a hard time finding space for equipment now in small buildings. I mean, there's so much new things required.
Yeah, I guess I think about everything fundamentally in a way needs to change. Problem one is not our management of trash, but problem one is the volume of trash that New Yorkers actually create. Between our addiction to food service delivery and Amazon, and then the hyper packaging of what we buy at the bodega and the gift shop and the florist. So this letter doesn't address all those problems. It attempts to address it sort of a post-consumption factor. And as always, the decision is, where do we draw the line of exemption? And I think that's the real issue.
I'm thinking more about physical limitation. That's the issue with like a small building's 25 feet wide, you know.
Well, I think, Joe, you and I always talk about this, like, that's the New York innovation at its finest, right? If we're putting something out there, well, the one good thing about capitalism is we typically innovate if we're forced to do something. And maybe this is a factor for that, is sort of the ideal direction I'm thinking.
I think we can put a note and say, you know, with an exemption, when exemption based on lack of space, when something like that.
I would say, Christine, for new construction, you have flexibility. When you're renovating, you don't.
Okay.
That's all.
I got it. That's fine.
Okay.
Katie?
So are we saying that, and because these these sound like such great recommendations, and the thoroughness of the project sounds awesome. But are we saying that all of these will only apply to buildings either that are being built or maybe highly renovated, depending on what language you use? And they won't apply to any of the buildings that already exist? Is that what this letter
No,
is saying?
the second table on page 4 shows you what would be applicable to existing building.
I'm sorry, the last part of your phrase, Christine, was what?
What would the page 4 would be applicable to existing buildings.
Ah, okay.
And so, as you can see, for small buildings, we are not asking any change for exactly this. The point that Joe was making is like, you don't have the space and you're not going to change it, right? But we're going to ask them to change the way they put it out, right? An operation. And for medium building, we assume that they have more space. So we are asking them to do a little more, okay?
Yeah.
So it was all about how much space those people may have. And we would expect that there is a lot of exception. People are going to come back and say, I don't have the space or whatever. But this is kind of a framework for saying this is what you should be asking, right?
Yeah. So I'm looking now at the page for existing buildings, and I live in one of those, in a huge building, over 100 units.
Right.
And strangely, it sort of goes to what Joe said about small buildings, that, our basement is full of stuff. I mean, I don't mean of stuff, but, it has all these requirements and with this huge building, they absolutely don't have space for a whole week's worth of waste in the basement, to be able to store it, and then to have firm containers that are rodent proof. I mean, again, like, I so support the ideas, but like, just realistically, I think so many buildings are going to say, what are you talking about? I mean, with all the people who live here, I mean, and to Jeffrey's point, God knows we have to fix so many other issues, but quite literally, I mean, it just seems to me that, I don't know how to fix it, Christina, but we are asking for something here that seems completely unrealistic. Like, people will just say, what on earth are you talking about? How lovely it sounds, but there is, how can a large building?
Well, I know what you're saying, but at the same time, if we all continue to ask nothing, then we'll continue to be swamped by garbage. So we need to create a framework. We know how those policies about, first of all, this is nothing until it gets through a lot of agencies and a political process who is going to look at that and probably water it down and probably say, oh, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. There will be probably a lot of exceptions, a process to go to the sanitation department and say, I can't do it, right? So I think there will be all these ways of customizing that to all the situation. But, I think we need to establish where we would like to be and then work from there. And that's what we did.
Okay, and I just have one last question. Did you, as part of these conversations, did you consider at all, something like, I forget what it's called, but basically like, a leads thing, like if your building achieves these goals, then you would be awarded,
Yeah, this is in the additional consideration. And we have put something which says, you should incorporate waste management into the framework of Local Law 97, which is equivalent to what you are talking about, which establishes criteria for building emergency efficiency. So now on the buildings, you have a little label which says this is an efficient building. And now that process would be incorporated in that and would become part of the success.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Leslie.
Thanks. Just to follow up on Katie's comments and some others, you have to put it out there, right? You have to put it out there. There's going to be a million excuses why we can't do this, why we can't do that. You know, our building, we're semi-small, we're 60 units, right? We have storage that we rent out. You know, maybe that has to go, stuff like that. You have to reprioritize. So I think this is fabulous. I want to say it's a great letter, Christine. It's not a letter, it's policy. And I think you guys really, really did your homework and your research. I think it's fantastic. And again, you know, we're CB4. We're not a government agency. These are our suggestions, and we hope that they take them seriously, but they're going to massage them. And I think it would be in our best interest to vote this through unanimously. I wouldn't say that, you know, anyone's vote is their vote, but I'm saying we have to move the needle, and we have to make the comment that we want to move the needle. Anyway, great job. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Alan, with the final question or comment?
Just a comment, just to follow up what Leslie and Christine just said about having to throw as much as you can up against the wall to see what sticks, kind of thing. We started with a plan from the city that said very little, had very little requirements, and didn't give a lot of road plan for anything. So we went all the way over to the other extreme, put out as much as we can, and when the time comes, it'll get negotiated into something that hopefully alleviates a lot of problems. But it was a process that the committee worked with. We worked with a lot of different groups on this, and I think it's got some very good points that I think will make a difference as we push forward. Thanks again, Christine.
Yeah, I want to say that the chair of the SWAB of New York, of Manhattan SWAB, gave us some very positive feedback and kudos about what's proposed.
And SWAB stands for Solid Waste Advisory Board, and each borough has one, just so folks know. Brad.
Solid Waste Management Advisory Board.
Management Advisory, sorry, thanks, Marty. Says the member of Manhattan SWAB. Brad?
Good evening, Chair. Yes, I'm concerned about taking out the language for smaller buildings, because in some of these landmark districts that we're in and these tight brownstone blocks, this is one of the biggest problems. So if a developer's coming to renovate a building, which they do quite often, and they dig out these cellars and they go all the way back, I don't think we should take that off the table, in my opinion. And I think we should ask for it. I mean, believe me, I build these buildings and you have to make accommodations. So I don't really agree with taking that off the table. And then I'm going to make my last join point, Jeffrey, because I know you like to talk about it. I think large buildings going in the future need to be looking upwards. And that's another way of taking it off the street. Because if a drone's going to take it out, just as they're going to get deliveries, we should put this on the table for future. Just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you,
and
Brad.
Also, we should say garbage disposals. The city wants to give out, you know, garbage disposals should be in every single unit, mandated. Even in these retro buildings don't have it. It should be a program rolled out, just like we put in the back waste off of water years ago in every building. They should do that now, and they should put those in every sink. That would help dramatically.
Thank you, Brad.
I'm fine. So I don't know. You may. I don't know what you guys want to do.
Christine, I'm not sure. Like, I think we need to find some nuance here. As was stated earlier, not only are we board 4 and we can make 7 items go till 9 p.m., but board 4 also sets smart policy. So the nuance between, I feel like a brownstone renovation for a single family and trash for that, or whatever it is, multi-unit, and a restricted multifamily or sort of tenement renovation, how we thread that needle, I think is important, because Brad does bring up a fair point here. just as Joe did in terms of the renovation there.
So I would propose to do, to make an asterisk and at the bottom say, with possible exemption for renovation of multifamily small buildings, which I think would cover that.
I see nodding from Joe. Brad, does that sounds like a good
No,
accommodation?
because the point is, as everybody said, that they're gonna take this and manipulate it. I think we should put in there that we want it on renovation of all sizes to accommodate. I don't think it's a big request. And if they decide to, because if you give a developer an exemption, guess that's an exemption you get.
So
I don't know what
this is something we actually talk about a lot, is how far we want to go in terms of development and whether or not we consider the distance of that sort of line we let developers sort of cross or go.
So what about adding low-income development, right? Low-income affordable housing?
I don't think it's affordable. It's just physical. I mean, that's a reality. If we don't want to acknowledge the reality, then just do it and just let it lay. But I think our policies are very nuanced, and that's why they're accepted and regarded highly.
Joe, the reality is when these guys come in front of us and give a full renovation, cellar, they dig down, they go back, they renovate, new boilers are smaller.
That's your experience for the
And
brownstone
I'm just
stuff.
saying,
It's not brownstones.
and we're trying to go for an overall policy.
All right,
not
so we're going
add
to
this our-
exclude brownstone. We're going to exclude
Christine, I'd
brownstone.
like to just finish. If
I'm
we
sorry,
exclude
Brad.
this policy, it now we're saying, sorry, guys, you're all out. Well, the biggest problem, garbage blocks, are the small blocks that we're talking about in our district. That's the biggest problem. The big buildings do have a bit more space, but everyday life on these blocks is brutal. And I don't think we should give it away. That's my opinion. I don't know if it's been changed as an amendment, but I'm against that. And then Jeffrey, you can take it from there.
Sure, let me, Darren, it seems like you want to say something on this topic.
Yeah, I do. I just want to chime in. I think our ask should be big and let them sort of reject that. But at the same time, there's a kind of datum that we can consider. Less than 10 units building does not require live-in super, for example. So we can actually use that kind of a sort of a benchmark to determine which buildings, when they go through renovation and have no expanded sort of basement or anything else, can be exempt. But other than those, should comply to this requirement. I think that's, I'm not saying it very clearly, but you get the point.
I hope I do. I think you said something, yeah.
Look, I think we're also now having a philosophical debate
Right.
on like where the line is drawn and as it
No,
relates.
it's not philosophical, it's real. I mean, it's in the city of New York, when you have less than 10 units, live-in super is not a requirement. Similarly, we can state that this policy nuance change that we're requesting may not be required for buildings that have less than 10 units and are not making a new basement or cellar. But any building, it could be a brownstone, it could have 10 units or less, but if they are actually renovating the whole building and adding a cellar, then I think this should be a requirement.
I think I like that language. I think we can live with that.
Dale? Oh, hand is down. Hand is
Okay.
down, Mr. Corvino.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so the amendment would say if it's for a small building of 10 and the renovation does not include making a new cellar, then it's not required.
Expanding a cellar
Expanding,
does not expand.
yeah, expanding the cellar, okay. Which I
Expanding
think,
or digging a new one.
yeah, which I think it's covered because, we're not at that refined level in that policy. We are at much higher level, but we'll put it in. Okay, next, right?
Yeah. Any other questions on these two, the policy or the letter to sanitation and the council member? Obviously, both will be updated to reflect this discussion. Well, 6 months of work rolled into a really, really amazing piece of policy that we get to push forward in our city. So thank you, Christine. Thank you to everybody, and of course for this discussion tonight as well.
And my co-chair David was still enjoying Italy.
Wow. The no to David, because he needs to be back now. It's September.
Right. We have to go.
So, okay. Final item on the agenda. Unfortunate piece of business. You know, as has been our custom, unfortunately, it's become a custom due to pedestrian fatalities. There was a recent fatality between a cyclist and a pedestrian collision in Chelsea. This letter attempts to address the need for safe infrastructure for pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles. It acknowledges that sidewalk conflict between cyclists and pedestrians is significant and needs addressing in our community. And the way in which we encourage addressing that is education, enforcement, and of course, proper infrastructure for various modes of transportation on the street. There were a couple of friendly suggestions, amendments that I'm sure folks will raise tonight. I see some hands as well, so I will take those in order. Marty.
Thank you for this letter. I appreciate it a lot. I have a question that I don't know the answer to. Has there been any consideration for additional licensing of some of the vehicles that are moving faster than 25 miles an hour, electric bicycles, mopeds, and so on? And is that an issue we should be taking on?
There's no additional licensings for moped and bicycle. They are licensing for scooters. I mean, I don't know who's talking about scooters and moped. I always get confused between those. Scooters are the one which are not supposed to be in the bike lane, and they are outside of the bike lane.
So like a Vespa, like
a Vespa or a small motorcycle.
Yep.
One of the issues that we've all been seeing is the vehicles that you're describing have been going in the wrong direction, going through traffic, et cetera, et cetera. You all know the deal. And I'm so pleased that the board is focusing on this. And I mean, this may not be the moment to do it, but there should be, here's a point where a policy issue, not just enforcement, but a policy issue is involved.
Thanks, Marty. David and then Roberta. David?
Excellent letter. A couple of technical notes. The second paragraph, the word, actually, the first sentence of the second paragraph, the word heartbreaking should be one word, possibly substitute tragic. And the sentence after that, between the word increase and cyclists, there needs to be a period or the word as. It really wants to be two sentences. There's something missing there.
Okay, you want to send me an email with that?
Sure.
So that I see where it is exactly. Okay.
Will do.
Thank you, David. Roberta and then Leslie.
This is a great letter. I very much appreciate it. I had what I think might be a friendly amendment based on what Jeffrey mentioned in the letter's introduction for the third paragraph. The third paragraph references enforcement, and it references education, but it does not reference the infrastructure and design pieces that I think the Transportation Committee as well as the board have emphasized in the past. I would in particular be interested in seeing if DOT would look into design that would improve this issue, as well as, I'm not sure if this was the issue in this case, daylighting intersections, because it can be hard for like pedestrians.
Roberta, in this case, the reason we didn't bring it up is that on 8th Avenue, there is a bike lane. This crash happened outside of the bike lane.
Okay.
So the cyclist was in the main street and the pedestrian were on the pedestrian crossing. So I am not quite sure that there was an infrastructure solution to that issue. And if we send a letter saying we want infrastructure solution, they're going to say, well, it doesn't apply. So I that's why specifically, but I can generally make a sentence about that, and I'll be happy to do that.
One place, and I've heard this bandied about a bit by advocates, is the widening of of bike lanes as we have additional multi-modalities, these electric and gas-powered vehicles that are not quite
That's a good point. We'll put
as
it
well
in.
as
Yes.
they go the wrong way. And then when the lanes are narrow, they'll sometimes take the vehicle lanes, and that creates a lot of chaos. So that might be an infrastructure solution as well.
That I'll put it in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roberta. Leslie and then Charlie.
I have two friendly amendments, questions, but what are you putting in the suggestion to widen we're widening bike lanes, and that's what the letter is, or putting multi-bike?
No, what the letter is still what it is. But I mean, Jeffrey mentioned that the solution to that problem are education, enforcement, and infrastructure, right? So this was an example of infrastructure that could be considered not on 8th Avenue, but generally speaking, because it's true that the problem we have is as there are more and more bikes now, and it seems that there is not enough space in the bike lane. Now they are going outside of the bike lane. And
I don't think that's the problem, but yes, I understand what you're saying. I think the problem is people not paying attention to law, direction and laws and lights for the most.
I agree with that.
So, the one thing I would suggest is the first line of the second paragraph. I don't understand what car fatalities have to do with this unfortunate and very tragic accident. And I think it's obfuscating our own argument, or our own, we're trying to talk about what we can do in this particular instance. And a lot of people have complained on CB4 meetings, but also at community council meetings. It's one of the greatest complaints is, the bike, and you've heard this, Christine. So I'm not sure by talking about,
Well, this sentence goes to credibility.
What do cars have to do with it here?
Well, this sentence goes to credibility, because whenever we raise the problem of collectively, the problem of bike, the response from the advocate and from everybody, even the DOT, says, look, the cars are much more of a menace. So why are you talking about that? But my point is that I wanted to say in that letter, I know that the cars are more a menace, and still I am concerned about, I would like to see more enforcement. So that was on purpose, in a sense.
That makes, that idea makes sense if we can word it a little differently, because I do have to say, and I think there have been people who've been on our board meetings, one who got hit by a bike going the wrong way, and she had a terrible shoulder surgery. The one thing these people here that are day after day is, well, at least you didn't get hit by a car.
Right.
At least,
I know.
And it's devaluing, it's devaluing what they went through. You know what I mean? They got hit, they're in the
hospital. If you have some language, Leslie, to
modify that would be great. And that's fine, because I like the language saying at the bottom about we have to include car and education, and everyone's working together, education on driver. That's great too. The other thing, Christine, if you could, do you mind adding, there was, it says with so many seniors who are frail.
Yeah, we want to change that, right?
Yeah, just because it's a little like victimization there.
Leslie, she was talking about me, so we will modify to.
You got the cane I sent you?
Brought in.
So if we can, Christine, very funny, Jeffrey.
That's no problem at all.
Thank you. Great letter, like the other one. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Charlie.
Yeah, thanks for this letter. I want to say that I actually really appreciated the footnote, because I think it's important to indicate that CB4 realizes that fatalities are much more likely by car, and I think these statistics are pretty illuminating that are in the footnote. So I really like it. I also liked the last line of that paragraph saying that the enforcement should not be exclusive to cyclists, but apply to the drivers as well. So I think that's great. I think the one thing that I find problematic about the whole letter is that we're asking for more enforcement from the NYPD and saying that it's critical that sidewalk space be dedicated to pedestrians, when in our district, particularly near our precincts, all of the sidewalk space is illegally parked on by the NYPD. And in fact, on 8th Avenue, there are new pedestrian islands that are encouraging daylighting and encouraging safety for cyclists and pedestrians. And those new islands, including the one at 54th and 9th in front of Hale and Hardy, are parked by NYPD every single day since they were created this summer. So I don't know if this is a friendly amendment or just I want to state that we're asking people to enforce these laws who are themselves the worst violator of our sidewalk space.
Well, I can add some sentence about the sidewalk use, you know, so to capture that.
Thanks, Charlie. Betty?
Yeah, thanks for this letter. It sort of hits home since it's near where I live. I am a little confused by help us educate cyclists at problematic locations. First of all, does DOT offer any education? And
yes,
maybe we need to acknowledge that they have, I don't know what it is, but acknowledge that they do. And is it incumbent on us to use their educational materials in some way? In other words, I feel like the letter is saying that we're responsible to educate cyclists. I think that maybe you need to clarify that a little bit.
So are you suggesting that we want to say that we want DOT to educate? That's what it is?
Well, I guess I think so, but I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what their education is.
Well, we know they have a program to educate. So that's we just have to ask for it.
Oh, ask that. And how do they present it to cyclists?
I don't know exactly, but they go to the location and then they stop them, and I think they give them flyers, etc.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. So right. Maybe we need to acknowledge that there should be more of that or something. But I don't want to educate anybody.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Candace, you had your hand up. Did your issue get addressed, or did you still have a question?
Yes, it did. It was pretty much about the NYPD, just the enforcement of the no cycling on the sidewalks. It was more about the enforcement of just the NYPD in general. I heard there was like a task force that was actually just for bikes to do for people speeding and slowing down. But they stopped that a couple of years ago. So maybe if we could add that back in or find out if that program is being redone. It was on 8th Avenue. The cops said they used to do it, but they don't do it anymore. So
yeah, I think by sending this letter, essentially we're asking them to focus on some of those issues. And the problem, we want to be very careful, because when the NYPD says, okay, go after the cyclists, we know what happens, right? It needs to be really calibrated and very careful. So I think the letter is telling that.
And just a thought that maybe the DOT, we use those billboards again and like the poop, and just slow down. Don't hit a cyclist, don't hit a pedestrian. Just a thought.
That's for the cars, right?
VMS boards.
Right.
Well,
now the VMS board are saying, free zone, free, gun-free zone.
Bernal, go ahead. Folks, I'm gonna put a stop to hands going up, quite frankly. David will have the last question on this item. So Bernal and then David.
Yeah, I was wondering if there was a way specifically for the delivery guys for us to look through to their employers and not penalize them personally. And especially if we've had the case of the 15-minute grocery stores that were coming up, and that was just putting additional pressure on the delivery guys to rush their deliveries. If somehow we can put something in there about I don't know, penalizing their employers.
Well, we've gone down that path, and the fact that all the delivery people are independent contractors make it that their employers are not taking responsibility for their action. So we had a discussion with DoorDash, who has delivery people as employees, and they have agreed to have a whole set of guidelines, etc. But most of the time they don't. So that's not something that is promising at all.
David Warren with the last question on this item.
Yes, thank you for this letter. I want to reiterate that we should concentrate more on infrastructure and rather than enforcement, because it's not fair to the police, and it hasn't worked out. But my thing is, Christine, I sent to you a couple months ago. I can resend it. There was a thing that slows down cyclists, especially by bus stops in the Bronx. I thought maybe we could put that as an experiment in our district, maybe by Penn South. So it would naturally, it's like a rubber thing. It would naturally slow down the cyclists. Things like that within the infrastructure. I think we have to be creative where
I'm
organically slowing down.
I'm concerned we're creating a lot of policy out of a letter that's meant to flag some concerns out of an unfortunate pedestrian death. So maybe there's a wider discussion to be had at Transportation Committee here around bike lane policy, whether it be rumble strips or daylighting or different types of treatments and education that the city can do more broadly around bike lanes. But I don't want to lose the opportunity or the scope of this letter, which is very specific to an event that should have not happened and been avoided, were sort of our initial things planned for and taken into account.
Okay, I agree. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, I just was a little concerned about the enforcement angle of it all. That's all. Okay, thank you.
I think that to me, it sounds like we are prioritizing education as a major highlight of the letter. We are calling out the need for enforcement, but also acknowledging perhaps the ironic or hypocritical stance of the call for enforcement when sometimes that's the agency that's flouting the law, unfortunate as it may be, but that no matter what, it's where we rely for these things to happen. And we'll continue to work with the city to find the best solutions and space to make infrastructure work for everybody, starting with the most vulnerable to those then who are the most protected. And I think transportation will take potentially further more of this up from a policy discussion down the line. Christine, does that sound fair?
Perfect.
Okay. Does anybody have any new business? It feels like somebody must, because this was supposed to be a succinct meeting with 7 items on our agenda, everybody. All right, so thank you for robust discussion and the business we took up this evening. I'm gonna pass it over to our co-secretaries, Katie and Blake, for the vote this evening. To clarify on a couple of things, Katie, if I may, before you flag there, we have 2 technical votes we have to take. As is our custom, we'll be voting on all items when your name is called. Separate from that, this is how we've previously taken votes. We'll be asking you in the same time your name is called to say yes on the ULURP action or no, which is item 4. So item 4 will be the first item that you are voting on. So when Katie or Blake call your name, you're gonna say yes on item 4 and yes to 1 through 3, abstain, I'm leaving, I'm tired, to the rest. However you may phrase it. But please start with your vote on the ULURP action, which by law we need to have recorded as a standalone roll call vote. So Katie and Blake will call your name. You will issue your vote on item 4, followed by a separate declaration of your votes on the rest of the items. Are there any questions? Jesse sent around the vote sheet again earlier today. Mr. Kern, as a former chair, I wonder what your question is.
I missed that last instruction. I'm tired, and what was the other part?
Scratch that.
Okay, are we ready?
Yes, Katie and Blake, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. So again, the first, when I call your name, the first vote is going to be for how you feel on the ULURP, how you're voting on the ULURP. The second one is on the other letters. And again, the ULURP is item number 4. And Ted, you get to start us off.
Yes to 4 and yes to all.
Great, well done. Roberta.
Yes to 4, yes to the rest.
Christine.
Yes to 4, yes to all.
Gwen. Sorry.
think she might be, she's having trouble unmuting again. Why don't we keep on going and we'll come back when she gets,
Okay,
take her vote.
great. Leslie,
Yes to 4 and yes to the rest.
Viren,
Yes to 4, yes to the rest.
thank you. Jessica,
Yes to all. Yes to 4, yes to the rest.
thank you. Dale,
Yes to 4 and yes to the rest.
Aurora,
Yes to 4 and yes to all.
thank you. Marty,
Yes to 4, yes to the rest, and the vote sheet has been submitted.
oh, bravo you.
Ah, it's so good.
Paul,
Yes to 4, yes to all, vote sheet submitted.
wow. Now we're just bragging, people. Okay, Pete,
Yes to 4 and yes to the rest. Submitted.
great. Tina,
Yes to 4 and yes to the rest.
Wendy,
Yes to 4 and yes to the rest.
Matt,
Yes to 4, yes to all.
thank you. Jesse,
Yes to 4, yes to the rest.
Candace,
Yes to 4, yes to the rest.
David, Luca,
Yes to 4 and yes to the rest.
Frank,
Yes to 4 and yes to the rest.
great. Josephine,
Yes to 4, yes to everything else.
Yadira,
Yes to 4, yes to the rest, and submitted.
thank you. Peggy,
Yes to 4 and yes to the rest.
Carrie,
Yes to 4, yes to all.
Lowell,
Yes to 4, yes to the rest. I'm switching from water to tequila.
congratulations. Blake,
Yes to 4 and yes to the rest.
Bert,
Yes to 4 and yes to the rest.
Chris,
Yes to 4, yes to all.
great.
Submitted.
Thank you. Betty,
Yes on 4 and yes to the rest.
Sarah,
Yes to 4 and yes to the rest.
Tina Nelson, no. Okay. Mike Noble,
Yes to 4 and yes to the rest and submitted.
thank you. JD,
Yes to 4, yes to the rest.
thank you. Maria,
Yes to 4, yes to the rest and submitted.
great. Alan,
Yes to 4 and yes to all the other items.
thank you. Brad,
Yes to 4 and yes to the rest. Thank you.
Joe,
Yes to 4, yes to the rest.
Sabrina,
Present, not eligible on 4 and rest of it, and yes to the rest.
thank you. Dolores, Dolores, I'll come back. David Solnick,
Not here.
Here.
okay. Then me, yes to 4 and yes to the rest. Charles,
Yes to 4 and yes to the rest.
thank you. Kit,
Yes on 4, yes on the rest.
great. Hector,
Yes to 4, yes to the rest, and submitted.
wow. Marino,
Yes on 4, yes on all, and submitted.
thank you. James Wallace,
Not here.
okay. David Warren,
Ineligible on 4 and yay to the rest, and I submitted.
thank you. Leslie Williams,
Yes to 4, yes to the rest.
great. Carl Wilson,
Yes to 4 and yes to all.
great. Alice,
Yes to 4, yes to all.
great. Jeffrey,
Yes to 4 and yes to the rest.
thank you. And let's see, who was it?
Gwen.
Gwen has her hand up.
Okay,
Yeah,
Gwen.
I'm here. Sorry, I was on mute when I answered the first time.
That's okay.
Anyway, yes on 4 and yes to the rest and submitted.
Great, thank you. And is there anybody else who didn't answer earlier who is here?
Dolores, did we hear? I know she's here.
Yeah, we heard Dolores, I think.
Okay, sorry,
Yep.
I didn't.
Okay, I think that's it. Blake, are we missing anybody else?
We did get Dolores and Tina Nelson.
Tina Nelson is not here, I didn't think.
Okay.
Tina is not here.
Yep.
All right, then I think we may have everybody.
Motion.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Blake. You know, we tried for an early closer, and we owe it to those who ceded the floor tonight. Thank you, everybody. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn at 8:59.
Thanks, everybody.
Second. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.